Right, so as Matt said, we're continuing that Journeys with Jesus theme, and today we're going to be looking at Mary. There was almost confusion. I was slightly worried. Matt yesterday said to me, so Mary Magdalene, blah, 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 blah. And driving here, I thought, that is not the Mary I'm speaking on, but it's okay. We have resolved it, and I'm just going to speak on the Mary I'm speaking on. So I am speaking about Mary, sister of Martha and Lazarus. Now, Mary has journeyed with Jesus. She's listened to Jesus. And today we're going to get to a point where she performs an outrageous act of worship. We're going to jump straight in. Oh, Matt, clicker. Happy days. There we go. Look at that. So we are going to jump into this story. We're going to look at Mary and where she appears, happy day, in the Bible to give us a bit of context for her. So we first meet Mary in Luke chapter 10, and we see her sat at the feet of Jesus. Her sister Martha is busy running around the house, doing jobs, serving food, and Martha is frustrated. She is irritated because Mary is not helping. She is sat listening to Jesus. And Jesus affirms that choice. Jesus says to her, Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. We then meet her again in John 11. Lazarus, Mary's brother, is sick, and a message is sent to Jesus. But Jesus delays travelling. And by the time he gets there, Lazarus is dead. It's Martha, Mary's sister, who initially goes out and meets her, but she soon calls out Mary, who joins them along the way with all the Jews who'd been there comforting them. And we see in that moment a relationship's developed. One of the things I like to do with the Bible is imagine what happens between the stories, because it's not all there. And so what we find in this story is all of a sudden, there's this woman who's met Jesus and she's been transformed. We don't know how often they've met, but there's something in the meetings that they've had that mean Mary is transformed by Jesus. She loves him. And Jesus clearly loves that family dearly as well. And there is this huge swell of emotion. We see Jesus weep. Mary is so frustrated. Mary says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. She is angry. She is upset. She is grieving. In those heartfelt moments of grief, I don't know if you've been there, your gut is like, oh, God. And God loves it. And Jesus meets her in that place. Mary pours out that emotion. And Jesus, it says in the Bible, becomes greatly disturbed. Jesus becomes greatly disturbed. I find that really reassuring. If Jesus becomes greatly disturbed, so can I. Jesus goes on and raises Lazarus. But in this story, we see Jesus confronted by death. He's confronted by his friend's death. He's confronted by Mary's grief. And he's also confronted by his own impending death. Jesus risked his life to be with Mary and Martha in an act of publicly raising Lazarus from the dead. Jesus triggers a plot to kill him. The Pharisees are scared of the impact it's having, and despite the danger he's in, despite the consequences he knows he's going to suffer, Jesus' heart is oriented to God, and he knows what he's doing is his Father's will. He acts in love. So, we're going to read from John 12. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honour. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who went later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was a year's worth of wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself from what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom had been raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. On account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. I don't know if you can imagine being there, but I reckon she kept her plan quiet, or I think her sister would have stopped her. I wonder if those around the table noticed as she approached. Maybe they just thought, oh, she's dropped something as she bent down. Maybe they thought, oh, she's going to wash his feet. That's fine, that's normal. I wonder if it was the smell that was the first thing that they noticed. A pint of liquid perfume is going to fill a room with a powerful smell pretty quick. Smell has cropped up just in that chapter before. Lazarus has died. And the thing they're worried about when they open the tomb is the stench that's going to come out. The smell of this perfume is a stark contrast to Lazarus's decomposing body. Jesus has put his life on the line by publicly raising Lazarus. And he started a chain of events that are going to lead to his death. And Mary is prophetically anointing Jesus for burial. Now, this perfume, it's not any old perfume. This perfume is a smell that anyone who had been into the temple would have known instantly. They'd have smelled it. Do you have smells that evoke feelings for you? I have a weird one, but toilet cleaner. When I was at secondary school, the bus stop I stopped at was next to some public toilets. And I'd arrive there I can't remember what day it was, but there was like a day a week that they were cleaned. And you'd get there and there would be this overwhelming smell of kind of like industrial disinfectant. And whenever I smell that smell, I'm taken straight back to standing at a bus stop waiting to be at school. This smell would have had a powerful effect. It would have evoked feelings of the temple for everyone who smelt them. And you know what? I think that smell of the temple is speaking to us about the presence of God. You know, it foreshadows a time when that presence isn't just confined to the temple. That smell isn't just confined to the temple. No, that smell is gone out into the community. And the presence of God in the death of Jesus is moving out into the community. It's encompassing them. It's a holy aroma. But Mary doesn't stop there. She goes on to unbind her hair and perform what can only be described as a deeply intimate act of using her hair to wash Jesus' feet. Now, John leans into this. He describes this deeply intimate moment between Mary and Jesus. And he uses all the language from Song of Songs. I don't know if you've read Song of Songs, but my word, it's quite a book. Song of Songs says this: "For your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant and your name poured out. Therefore the maidens love you. While the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance." Song of Songs is this deeply intimate portrayal of love, and John is using the language of Song of Songs here. He's pushing in to this deeply intimate love that's being shown from Mary's extravagant act of worship. And I have, maybe unreasonably, quite a lot of sympathy with Judas at this point. Now, Judas gets a lot of flack here for saying, excuse me, money, shouldn't have this been spent on the poor? But let's be clear. Every single man in that room is feeling deeply uncomfortable at that moment. Every single person is thinking, oh my goodness, Mary, what are you doing? She's washing. I mean, if I got down and washed somebody's hair with my feet with my hair right now, most of you are going to be feeling quite uncomfortable, okay? Judas takes the flak. That's because John is building up a character portrait. It's all about his storytelling. It's all okay. But everyone is uncomfortable. But Mary has done a good thing. Extravagant and intimate worship, when we give it from our heart, delights God. But do you know what? It really offends human beings. When we worship extravagantly, that worship can cause other people to go, ooh. I remember the first time I was in a church and I saw someone put up their hand and I honestly thought, what a weirdo. Because I did not know extravagant love of Jesus in my heart. And now I'm all for a little bit of dancing. The extravagant worship of God delights him. Love can make us do some crazy things. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. This is my friend Matt. He proposed to his wife Maddie by taking her up and putting an enormous sign on the Clifton Suspension Bridge that says, Maddie, will you marry me? The man has guts, but she said yes. So it's all okay. This is a penduline tit. My friend Pete quite likes birds. Okay, I said quite like. He loves birds and moths, actually. But he spent, in the middle of winter, he heard the penduline tits are in Britain. They're never in Britain, these tiny little brown things. And so he went out to Bridgewater and spent 4 hours in the middle of winter in the cold, freezing, to see a penduline tit. He didn't get to see one. So he went again, 4 hours, freezing cold, middle of winter, to see a penduline tit. Still didn't get to see one. So he went out a third time. Most of us by this point would have gone, I give up, they've flown away. No. Time number 3, after 4 hours in the winter, he saw a penduline tit. Love of birds makes him do crazy things. This is Glow Up. It is a makeup program. My daughter has watched this program. She has to watch this program to go to sleep. We have very strict sleep routines in our house to help her. I have watched all 7 series of Glow Up 5 times. I can tell you every single person. I know it word for word, but I love her. And so if I need to spend 20 minutes every night watching Glow Up with her, I'll do it because I love her. I'm sure each of you have done crazy things for love. When we love, we take a risk. We become vulnerable. We put ourselves through discomfort. And we don't mind. Are we willing to do that for Jesus? Mary has been transformed. When she sat at Jesus' feet, her heart has been so turned to Jesus. It doesn't matter that everybody thinks she's bonkers, because in her heart she knows, I've got to pour out all my love. I've got to love Jesus with everything I've got.
But then become a Christian, you are vulnerable anyway.
Yeah, you are vulnerable. And when you do that, you pour out that love to Jesus. It does.
That's the whole purpose.
It makes you vulnerable. But do you know what? That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary to do that. She has found that abundant life in Jesus. And it's this act of abundance that she's going to be remembered for. Do you know what I like about this? She hasn't been caught up in singing. I get easily caught up in singing. But she's not done that. She's experienced the presence of God in her everyday life. And there's something about her life that's so infused by the love of God, that her life is poured out in worship. Romans 12 says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper act of worship. You know, when our hearts are oriented towards God, we make better choices. When my heart is oriented towards God, my work is oriented towards God. My rest is oriented towards God. My play is oriented towards God. And it makes them part of my worship. Now, I don't know about you, my heart gets pulled away from God very quickly. And I have to constantly reorientate myself back to Jesus and back to Jesus, because I know that when I don't, my choices get screwed up. Because when my heart is oriented towards him, I honour people better. I treat myself better. I work better. I rest better. I don't like rest. I'm not great at it. But I rest better when my heart is oriented towards Jesus, because I know it's what he needs me to do at that moment. And I play better. I'm more willing to have fun, because all of them become part of my worship. Singing helps me. For some of you, solitude might help. Nature might help. Fasting or study might help. And that will change as seasons go. I've really noticed in my life that a season of study really orientates me towards God, and then all of a sudden it's not doing that. And I have to go, okay, God, what's going to point my heart towards you now? And it might be worship, it might be nature, but I've got to keep working at it to do that. Matt, I've no idea what time I started. Should I stop? Or okay, just checking. I've only got one more thing to say to you anyway. I'm really bad at keeping an eye on time. But there's this thing that I read, and it's by a guy called David F. Ford. And he says this about this story. John's way of telling it helps readers, and especially rereaders, to figure themselves into it, to be prepared for grief and danger, as well as family life and celebration, and to improvise further and daringly in line with who Jesus is and what he does and suffers. Now, I love this idea of improvising daringly. Some of you who I know me, know that my background is in theatre and performance, and I love it. I really love it. And there's something I'm going to tell you all about improv. I don't know if you've seen Whose Line It Is It Anyway on telly, or if you've seen any improvised comedy, but there is a really simple rule with improvisation. And the rule is this: whatever is said to you, you say yes and you take it another step further. So somebody throws you an idea, yes, and off I go. And that's how it works. If you start saying no, you shut down the conversation and it's not very funny. You say yes and. I wonder if a life of worship looks a little bit like that. When our hearts are pointed towards Jesus and when we hear his voice leading us and calling us, do we shut it down and say no? Or do we say yes and keep going? When we hear a voice leading us to an act of compassion, to a random act of kindness, into taking time out and resting, into being countercultural in an act of grace or of service, do we say yes to Jesus and go and do it? So what do we need to do? We need to check in with our hearts. Where's your heart oriented towards? I say this because my heart I was at community church this morning, and between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock, my heart had already been pulled to many different directions. And that's the case for us, isn't it? When we live our life, our hearts get pulled backwards and forwards. How are we checking in and saying, is my heart oriented towards Jesus? Not just on a Sunday. When I think about what am I going to be doing this time tomorrow, is my heart still going to be oriented towards Jesus? So that my work, so that my play, so that my parenting, so that my resting are all part of my worship. And are we brave enough to improvise daringly? On your Easter extravaganza, when somebody comes up to you to talk to you about Jesus, are we brave enough to improvise daringly and say, not just would you like to come up here, but actually we've got this toddler group, but actually we've got something else. Let me tell you what Jesus has done in my life. That's scary. But Jesus calls us to improvisation, and improvisation is fun. It's fun, this life Jesus is calling to us, and that worship is gonna be fun. You know what Mary did, bonkers as it may have looked to the people, was an outrageous act of worship, but golly, do I think it was good fun. So what I'm calling you today as we worship is to improvise daringly in line with Jesus.
That's because she wasn't ashamed.
She wasn't ashamed, no. So I guess we're going back into worship now. Take a moment with your heart to say, God, am I aligned with you? And if you're willing, say yes, and let's go.